Okay, everybody, you pretty much see the two that in front of you right now. The two I'm going to talk about, the topic and well, obviously the video will, the title of the video pretty much explains. Let me try to move that center too. There we go. But the title up there pretty much asks the question that a lot of fans, long time or not, have been asking. And that question is, why is Sonic and Sally always paired in the comics? In other words, why are they romantically paired? Why are they, as it's been said in text at the Sega forums and various other sites and everything, as well as here on YouTube, just like I mentioned before, previously in the mandates video and stuff like that, why are these two always the de facto or default pairing? Why are they always the ones that get paired together instead of pairing them out off with other people? Why is it every time, even if you do pair them together, why do you always end up going back to them as a couple? Why do they always end up back together? That is the question. That is what everybody wonders. Why are they always the default pairing or the de facto pairing? Why do Sonic and Sally always end up together? Well, like I said in the video, a lot of people have said this at this topic that I provided a link for in that video, and you go to that video where I talk about the mandates and why they're there. It's actually I think it's a two-part video, so I'll have to give you the link to the playlist. But basically what it is with the mandates is, just like I said there, and you can read the link that I'll provide again to that same topic over at the Sega forums. But basically the reason for the fact that Sonic and Sally here are always the de facto, the default pairing, the reason they always end up getting back together, whether fans like it or not, is because of mandates that basically say Sonic can have a long-term relationship. He can't have a long-term relationship with any female. Now some might say, well, you have other options out there for him, don't you, if that was the case? Well, yeah, you do have other options. You have options like, say, a Mina Mongoose, or Mina Mongoose, depending on what you call her. You have other options out there. You do. But you see, most of the options basically are taken up right now. I mean, some might say, well, you could have an option with Nicole, but Nicole's taken up, if you will. She's an AI. She's an AI, and she might already be taken up by several other candidates. But we don't know who those candidates are because that may never be explored except through fan theory. And that fan theory basically points at maybe three candidates: Espio, Tails, and Rotor. And that's about it. Now some might say, well, what about Bunny? Bunny's married. That's out of the question. Then you might say, well, what about Shade? Shade has yet to really appear in the comics, except for a backstory and in Seth's encyclopedia that you see there. So, no, that's kind of out of the question right now. And again, I know you'll name off several other ones as well, like Tikal. She's a spirit, out of the question. Rouge, you could kind of go in that direction, but not really. She's more of what people call a shadow girl. Then you might say, well, what about Blaze? Blaze in the comics isn't as a dimension, but it's a possibility. And then, of course, people will ask, well, what about Amy? Again, possibility, but not really. You see, according to several writers and editors at Archie Comics, they basically said that Sonic has been mandated that he cannot have a long-term romantic relationship with any girl. And that Amy, despite how fans feel about it, cannot be, his temporary girlfriend whatsoever. Because you see, despite how you look at it, the comics and the games are kind of different. You see, the games, in more or less, if you want to look at it as an extension, Sonic X, they have Amy sort of being like maybe a year or two younger than Sonic. Maybe 3 years younger. Which would kind of make sense. And to put them together if you wanted to. And Sonic X, towards the end of the second season and the third season, towards the end of both seasons, kind of hinted at that. Kind of hinted at that, if you will. However, the mandate basically when it comes to the comics is that Amy has to be as she is in the games. Now, like I say, Sega could kind of loosen up on the mandates, and they've proven that. I mean, like I say, you take a look at the final episodes of both Season 2 and 3 of Sonic X, and it kind of shows you that they do loosen up a little bit. Not much. The truth is, Sonic and Sally, the reason they'll always pair together is because they are, no doubt, the de facto pairing. They are the pairing that basically is like, hey, you can break them up and it wouldn't hurt the characters. They can remain friends, but they'd have to put the relationship, the romantic side of the relationship and friendship to the side and focus more on being freedom fighters. Which would make sense. Which would make sense. Now, again, people might say, well, Sonic and Amy could do the same thing. Again, it's about difference and the mandates that Sonic cannot be around, cannot date Amy whatsoever, cannot show any romantic interest in Amy. Because the biggest difference between the comics as well as the games and more or less Sonic X is as much people want to see it, as much as people have looked at it, and I've mentioned this before, and some people have mentioned it, or several people have mentioned it in the mandates topic at the Sega forums, is the age difference. Like I said, in the games and more or less Sonic X, you could say she's maybe 2-3 years younger. But in the comics, she's more or less 5 to 6 years, maybe 7 years younger. And that's all basically played out on the fact that she used the Ring of Acorns around the 70-ish issues, if you will, I think 79 or 78, to wish herself older. Physically older, but not mentally. How is that? How can that be, you might ask? Well, basically later on, after they did this big old Sonic Adventure adaptation, which spanned several issues, if you will, as well as a Sonic Super Special, an original Sonic Super Special, and then even afterwards, they did a side story, a backstory, where you had Tails and Amy go to class. And you had Amy, to her surprise in the story, attending the same class as Tails, because in that one short story, it showed that yes, physically she had an older body, but mentally she was still the same age as Tails. So that kind of proves basically why she can't, mandate-wise, can't be with Sonic and vice versa. And also they want her to stay close to who she is in the games. And what she is in the games, and it was shown in Sonic X as well, is a girl that's trying her best to get Sonic to be her boyfriend, that chases after her, and does anything she can to impress him. Again, speaking of side stories, they did a side story with her being trained by Julie Sue, and Julie Sue wanting to know why she wanted her to train her. And she basically explained why. She wants to impress Sonic. Which again, goes back to keeping her character true to who she is in the games. Now, how does Sonic and Sally fall into it? Well, how many times have they broken up and ended up back together? How many times? Several, right? They've ended up together, back on and off several times. The reason is their relationship is the kind of relationship, believe it or not, that works in the temporary relationship category, as I mentioned before. Basically, it allows Sonic and Sally to be boyfriend-girlfriend, but if they need to break off the relationship and focus more on being freedom fighters, they can do that. If they feel, you know what, we got too much going on right now to focus on being boyfriend, girlfriend, let's just kind of put that to the side and just be friends as well as be freedom fighters. And then when the time presents itself, we can go back to it. I mean, why do you think it always happens? Why do you think it happened at the end of issue 50? Why do you think it happened in 122, 123? Why do you think it happened? Huh? Why do you think that even though it took nearly, well, I wouldn't say 100 issues, but let's say about 91 issues or so. Well, no, not actually that. Let's say about, they broke up in 134. They got back together in 222. So let's say about 88 issues. It takes 88 issues for them to get back together as a couple. It takes them 88 issues. But yet it happens. And people still ask why. Again, it's about the fact that they have been firmly established. Doesn't matter who the writer is. Sega has basically, I'm pretty sure, understood that these two have been firmly established as the main romantic couple, but they're also the kind of romantic couple that can be temporary, that can be on and off. In other words, off when need be, on when need be, off, on, rinse and repeat. That's basically what it is. A rinse and repeat cycle. And also the fact that every comic needs a main romantic couple that's willing to go through that. DC has had it with Bruce Wayne, Selina, Superman, Lois Lane. Marvel has had it with Peter Parker, MJ. Peter Parker and Mary Jane. You know, Jean Grey and Cyclops. Rogue and Gambit. You know, the list could go on. Tony Stark and Pepper. You know, again, the list can go on and on. The fact is, no matter how much you look at it, no matter how much you look at it in a way, no matter how much you want it to change, no matter how much you would rather have Sally with somebody else, and it has been proven she can be. I mean, the list of people she's been courted by, if you will, it's not an endless list, but names like Antoine, before he got with Bunny, Jeffrey St. John, before she decided Sonic was her, you know, was the person she was meant to be with. Monkey Khan, believe it or not. You know, again, the list goes on. I mean, not goes on, but there's sort of a good list there. So it shows that she too can go out with other people. But you see, the thing with the fact that Sonic and Sally always ending up together in the comics is, again, their relationship is based off the mandates, and the mandates being that, hey, he can have a relationship, but it's got to be temporary, and the Sonic-Sally relationship works in that category. Believe it or not, it does. I mean, they had Sonic go with Fiona for a while, but if you will. They had him showing interest in Mina. They had him showing interest in Bunny, if you will, because he thought Bunny and Antoine had broken up. So he does show interest in other girls too. But the thing is, despite who they show interest or who they go with, it's all due to the temporary, off portion of the relationship, and thus builds it back up to the on relationship portion of it. That is why the relationship that's why they always get paired together. It's the only one so far that basically works within the mandates of a temporary relationship for Sonic to be in. And again, it's basically Archie Comics. Sega looks at this as Archie Comics and their version of Peter Parker, Mary Jane, Cyclops, Jean Grey, Rogue, Gambit, Batman, Selina Kyle, Superman, Lois Lane, Peter Parker, MJ. You get the idea. Tony Stark, Pepper. They see it as their answer to the pairing, and that is why it happened. And that is why they're always paired together in the comics. So hopefully that answered some questions. If not, just let me know down below. I'll provide a link to several of the things I talked about. And I will talk to you all later. Comments and video responses are greatly welcomed.